Hey, it's a Toxic Ring Scandal featuring TBK, the Turnbuckle King. We are at it again, y'all. We're here to talk about a good one today. Going to talk about the worst Intercontinental Championship times, talking about secrets behind the Intercontinental Championship, the championship that is a mid-card championship for the WWE. And many people have held this championship, many prestigious wrestlers, many Hall of Famers, legends, and even current superstars have held this title. But yeah, we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna do a little history of the Intercontinental Championship and the scandals behind it, behind the scenes, and also we'll talk about other things amongst of what's happened. May even get some interviews in there and react to them and see what they talk about there. But let's see who came into the locker room while we at it. CeeLo Myers, salute to you. Welcome to the locker room as usual. Been a supporter. But enough for me, guys. As usual, when we always do the locker room, it's time to air the dirty laundry. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the Intercontinental Championship, the worst times that this Intercontinental Championship has faced in the history of the championship that's been since its inception in 1979. So, if you guys give me a moment, we're gonna get started and we won't talk about it, and we definitely gonna talk about it. Here comes the money. All right. So we're gonna talk about tonight two scandals over the Intercontinental Championship, and we also gonna go over the top 10 Intercontinental champions of all time. So thank you all for coming in. See who's in here before we start. I thought about maybe the whole top Intercontinental champions. We'll talk about that at another time, probably at the red carpet reign. But I mostly want to focus on the worst Intercontinental Championship times and the stuff that this championship has gone through. My focus is going to be on that. I wanted to talk about that, but we're going to more focus on that. So let's get into that. You guys come over to House of Rain Scandal. Also coming to Red Carpet Reign. So it's both wrestling channels. This one, Scandals and Controversy here at the Toxic Reign Scandal, and regular wrestling concerts on Red Carpet Reign. And I'm also on Rumble, and that's where we're going to play the number one top championship, Intercontinental Championship match of the top 10 Intercontinental champions. So we're going to discuss that right now. So I will go over the scandals first, here at Toxic Reign, and when we're finished talking about the two Intercontinental scandals, we're going to cross that bridge and go over to Red Carpet Reign and discuss the top 10 Intercontinental champs of all time. And then we're done there, we're going to cross the bridge again to Rumble to go over that one match. So let's get into that. Now, the first one, it's going to be about when Jeff Jarrett held up the WWE and Vince McMahon for $300,000. That's the top scandal, because that's what it is in the thumbnail. Well, today, this is the main scandal. This is the thumbnail. It's regarding this match. It's between Jeff Jarrett and Chyna back in 1999 over the new No Mercy pay-per-view. But this is why he agreed to do this match and lose to Chyna and also lose his Intercontinental Championship. It had to do with this story right here. Now, it says here that Jeff Jarrett and Vince McMahon have a well-documented history. Their relationship is best known for the time when the former allegedly held up WWE for a staggering $300,000, and of course the latter's reposted 2 years later. Back in 1999, which was 24 years ago, Jeff Jarrett was set to wrestle an important match against Chyna. and WWE wanted him to put her over to generate headlines. He agreed to do so, but only if he was paid 300 grand before his contract expired. Now they said alleged his contract expired one day after the No Mercy pay-per-view. So he was contracted to wrestle, or was it one day before No Mercy? Because he really didn't have to be there, but it was good to have him there. Vince McMahon was pretty much in a tight spot, sort of say. So that's what happened with that scandal. Now, Goodbread, do you want to put your input on this scandal?
Definitely, I add something to this. This was crazy because at this point, Jeff Jarrett was feeling gypped. He was feeling raw because at this point, WWE had the click running things. It was all politics, and then WCW had NWO. So Bischoff had his boys, Vince had his boys, and Jeff Jarrett always was feeling away. He was always feeling like he was better than the position that the company he was in had for him. And Jeff Jarrett was a spoiled boy too, because you got to remember his father had territories. His father was actually one of the few guys that never got his territory brought out from Vince. And even in a shoot, in a shoot he had on WWE TV, he told Vince that he told Vince some truthful dreams. That he said he thought Vince was trying to sabotage him because he couldn't buy his father out. So it was all sorts of things. But at that point, Jeff Jarrett was money grabbing because he seen that they didn't see no future in his character. So, and it's a shame to me if you ask me. I mean, Jarrett was for his gimmick to be a copy of Honky Tonk Man. Boy, he was better than the Honky Tonk Man.
Because I am that damn good.
That's true. Jeff Jarrett, he knew the business from his dad, Jerry Jarrett, who owns territories. And Jeff Jarrett knew what he could do to finagle Vince McMahon to pay him his money. As I also have on this channel, House Ring Scandal, Ultimate Warrior did similar things, not the same, but somewhat similar, back in SummerSlam 1991, when he got Vince McMahon to pay him, but he was terminated afterwards, obviously. But yeah, that was a big scandal. And Chyna was the first and only woman to win the Intercontinental Championship following this victory at the No Mercy pay-per-view. She held on 2 occasions. She was also co-champion with Chris Jericho at one point. Also, Jeff Jarrett was a former Intercontinental champion. We will get to that later of the top 10 Intercontinental champions. But we have one more bonus scandal. And this actually goes further back than this scandal. This is when the Intercontinental Championship was originated from the very, very beginning, back in 1979's tournament. We're going to get into that now. That was over this story, which is why WWE chose Rio de Janeiro, if I said that correctly, for historic Intercontinental title debut. Wrestling fans know Pat Patterson becoming the first ever Intercontinental champion in Rio de Janeiro, but we now know why they chose that city. There's stuff behind that too. Like, subscribe as you guys come in, give you pure information here, give you good wrestling content. Also, like, subscribe at the Red Carpet Ring on YouTube and also on Rumble. We will be at those platforms later. But let's continue the story. Bruce Pritchard in an interview, he said that they had a tournament in Rio de Janeiro, and the reason the tournament was held there because the winner of that tournament that never actually happened. What? Never happened. They said was the only Pat Patterson champion. And the reason they picked Rio de Janeiro because Pat couldn't say Rio de Janeiro. That is petty. Bruce goes on to do a goofy impersonation of Pat's trying to say the name and finally asked that Vince found it absolutely hilarious that Pat couldn't say the words so much he would have capacity to color commentary. But the highlight of this is right here. Says it right here. What makes it interesting, there was no tournament. There wasn't a tournament. So the whole tournament of the Intercontinental Champion, which was merged of the Mid-Atlantic Championship and the South African Championship, which was held by Pat.
Tell me you did not just say that.
Patterson, the South African Championship, and the Mid-Atlantic Championship held by Ted DiBiase. They said that was not really a tournament. It was just a storyline to get the Intercontinental Championship in the origin story. And that origin story was being based in Ray de Janeiro, was chosen for that one specific and frankly petty reason, which I do agree, because he couldn't pronounce the words correctly. That is crazy. And they say, like I said earlier, Ted DiBiase was currently holding the North American Championship, and back in '79, and he lost to Pat Patterson, South African champion. Knowing this was back when Vince McMahon Sr. ran the WWF at the time, Vince's dad. He did not want a South African champion or a North American champion, so he did something. He did something bigger in both titles, but not as quick, not as big as the world title. And he compromised what's called the Intercontinental Championship. That's how the title was born. And that suggests that Patterson won this. This is crazy. I never knew so recently there was never really a tournament. It was basically all a lie. It was just a storyline. That's crazy. I just recently found out not so long ago. And I know Mr. Goodbread can give his input because he knows more about story than I do.
Yeah, definitely. You touched on it. This was a title. See, this title took a lot of evolutions because now, when it originally came, it was just WWE could not use this title under their umbrella because Vince Sr. he still had respect for the territory. Vince Jr., he did not have respect for anything. So, like you said, they hired $1 Million Man. This was part of Vince's plan to destroy the territories. $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, guys, for those y'all didn't know, he was the Mid-Atlantic champion in the territory. Vince bought him and the title. So he came, part of him offering him a contract was so he can steal the title over. So he brought the title over, right? He lost it to Pat Patterson. That's when Vince knew he cannot use that North American title. Besides that, at the same time, Vince Jr. started to get more control over the company. They were grooming him to take over from his dad. So he had an idea to where he can get how could I say it? I mean, it's real racist, guys. The root of the Intercontinental Championship, as we know it, is real racist. Like he wanted a Caribbean title. This is why, if you notice, a lot of the people that have that title were Spanish orientated. Pedro Morales, Tito Santana, a lot of them, right? So the part where you say he couldn't pronounce Rio de Janeiro, that's why they chose to have it in Rio de Janeiro, because they was trying to give it that islandy, that Pacific, title. They wanted to give it that Pacific feel where, in the process of that, they created that whole idea of it being a tournament, which it was no such thing as a tournament. It was just that they needed to come up with a reason why Pat Patterson just was the North American champion. You know what I mean? So then instead of just merging the titles, they left the North American title I think somebody beat Pat Patterson. No, somebody beat Ted DiBiase. No, Pat Patterson beat Ted DiBiase. And then Pat Patterson ended up having 2 titles. He had the Intercontinental title with the new Intercontinental, and he had the what you call it? He actually had the what's the title? The North American title. He had both.
Yeah, the North Atlantic, North American and the South African title. I know we got 12 people in here, guys. Let's get the likes up. Come on, guys. We gotta do better. This is good information getting out regarding this prestigious championship. We right now talking about the inaugural champion, the late Pat Patterson. Let's get the likes up, guys. Come on, let's get the likes up. Merged to the Intercontinental Championship.
Yeah, but that North American title, he lost it in a non-sanctioned match. He lost it to a guy who ended up retiring with the title until they just brought it out with Adam Cole. You know what I mean? In which he didn't matter. It didn't matter to him because they needed to usher in the Intercontinental title, and that's what they did. They ushered in the Intercontinental title. He went on to lose the North American title, and they just not mentioned it. Like, that's what make this title such a scandal, because they still never mentioned I forgot the guy's name that won the North American title from Pat Patterson, but that was weird. And the whole thing stems from a lie. But once Pat Patterson lost it, that's when they started to usher in this tropical, let's get the Islanders. If you notice, all of the guys that swamped around that Intercontinental title was Tito Santana, Jimmy Silverfly Snuka, Pedro Morales. You know what I mean? All of those guys were not American descent.
Man, you touched on some good points there. And I saw about that reading the story. The North American Championship now is with NXT, which is WWE's developmental brand that comes on Tuesdays. So that's how that championship is basically not a new title, but it was rechristened. It's just not on the main roster. They put on a developmental roster. And I didn't think about it. It did have an islandy, non-American guys win that championship in the beginning. Like you said, Jimmy Snuka, Tito Santana, Don Morocco, I believe.
Absolutely. I forgot his name, Don Morocco.
Don Morocco, yeah. Him, you had many other guys. So it's a lot of dirty laundry behind this championship. It's just they don't want to say it's not, but it really is. Like this championship had a lot. And then, like I stated earlier, you had Chyna, only one woman win this championship, but the way she won it is because Jeff Jarrett held up Vince McMahon for $300,000, and they want to highlight that.
That's not a household item, is it? It certainly is. I guess it is. I don't know. Every never count.
It's just a whole bunch of stuff with the Intercontinental Championship. Now, I'll give another bonus again. I found something recent too. Cody Rhodes, when he brought out the retro design of the Intercontinental Championship back in 2011, he was supposed to put that out like that. WWE almost got sued for putting that out. I heard scandal. And because it was so popular, it pretty much resurfaced that design. They kept it until recently. They got a new design back in 2020, but 2011 they brought that design back. And I heard Cody was supposed to put on TV because Cody Rhodes was the champion at the time they brought that design back. Before he left in 2016. So like I said, it's always some drama behind this belt. It's like their drama cannot leave the championship.
That's a fact, though, KDH. And the title definitely went through so many different transitions and re-upmakes. And the actual title that Cody had wasn't the original white lace belt. It wasn't the original because it was missing the gold tips. It was missing the gold strap, the gold tips on the strap. You know what I mean? And it was missing the actual WWE logo that's imprinted on the buckles, on the buckle part. But it did look really close. But it was different from the one that the title that the Warrior wore, or even the title that Mr. Perfect had. Up until they changed it once I think it was when The Rock won it, when they Rock won it, and they went with the more ovalish. They went with that more ovalish title. You know,
Yes.
Stone Cold threw the title in the water, some shit like
In
that.
In a river, yeah. Yep, that's the one. I didn't like that design too much. I like the old school one. And I do that horrendous one they have now. That's a whole nother story for another day. I hope they redesign that one too, but you know, give or take or two. We'll see how long that lasts. But those are the scandals behind the Intercontinental Championship. Now, let me see who's in the house here. D. Brown. All right, guys. Now, since we discussed the scandals behind the Intercontinental Championship, dating back to the 1979 made-up tournament in Rio de Janeiro, you know, with Pat Patterson winning. Also, we talked about, of course, the big story of Jeff Jarrett being Intercontinental Champion at No Mercy 1999 in a good housekeeping match with Chyna, which he lost the title to, but under the conditions that he will be owed $300,000 as he was not on contract. It was kind of Jeff Jarrett up to hit the balls in his court, and he held the WWE up for money. And Vince McMahon stated that he want his money. So it's crazy, but I know one thing. Jeff Jarrett, he talked about this actually. He talks about it a couple times. He talks about it once on his podcast, Jeff Jarrett podcast, but it's boring, it's whack. Don't nobody want to hear that podcast. But you know, I know he did talk about this on Inside the Ropes. Jeff Jarrett did do an interview with that. He talks about actually holding up the WWE for money and also losing the belt to Chyna. So it's going to be interesting. I think he did this maybe a few years ago, actually. So he talks about Inside the Ropes. They got good content over there. Salute to the Inside the Ropes. And we're going to see what Mr. Double J had to say about his time as Intercontinental Champion, the whole rift with WWE and losing it. But let's get into it in a second. Good Times TV, welcome to Locker Room. You said early 90s to mid 90s, HBK was the best wrestler like Michael Jordan wrestling. At one point, yes, HBK was on top. He was until he lost his smile. And I just covered that story a few days ago. But other than that, HBK definitely one of the best ever to do it. Definitely. But let's get into it. Let's see what Jeff Jarrett had to say about this Intercontinental Championship, this whole scandal. So this will be just about what we just discussed. So let's talk about it. And you guys get the likes so when you come to the locker room. Subscribe, keep the notification bell
on. So you do the whole angle. It's leading up to No Mercy. You get beat by Chyna in the Good Housekeeping match, and at this, in 1999, you didn't really have the Observer or anything else. You didn't get stuff delivered to your door, and no one knew that was going to happen. Yeah. So the next night, where's Jeff Jarrett on Raw? He's not there. He's talking about him, but then on Nitro, you show up out of the blue. Even for you, who's walked out before, how strange was that 24-hour period for you that you go into No Mercy, you drop the belt to Chyna, you leave the company, you go to Nitro the next day, and then you're all of a sudden a top guy in WCW?
It's surreal, and again, so personally and publicly, there's no way to duplicate that time frame. It's like I had a one-way ticket to Cleveland, bought by the WWF, and I had a flight that was purchased by the Turner organization, WCW, from Cleveland to Philly. Philly. That's bizarre. Me packing my bags, I'm packing, okay, I've got I got a house show and I got No Mercy. Oh, then I got this thing called Nitro, and I'll be back home. It was surreal, and one of the I've been told here's just a real bizarre type situation, because not to get too long-winded here, but obviously was not happy with the offer that they gave me. The business was red hot. The company was going public. And as the company was going public, I was like several of us, but there were stock options that was offered to me. And I had done what I thought, or definitely what I thought it was. I did what was best for me and my family, my career, signed with WCW, dropped the title. And I can remember having a brief conversation with JR, another WWE, couple different office people that were part of the stock options and all that. I said, look, I'm leaving. Is we're going to cut a deal here, but is that still part of the deal? And they're like, yeah, but I don't think they would have told me no at that point. Because I don't think they knew. So I can remember landing. For any historian, was the first Nitro I did Philly? I don't know. I think it is.
We can get that good. It was over 18th, 1999.
Yes. Yeah. But I want to say, because I can remember at the old building, anyway, I was standing there on a cell phone talking to, at a Nitro, had that show going up, but I can remember talking to the office at the WWF and did all the finish and got my check and did all of this. This is a big story, but I need to get this. Talking to them and talking about stock options. And I said, look, let me, you got a pen and paper right now. I got my financial guy's number and all this. And we still did even after all that, I still got my stock options and went on. And that's why, during my memory today, WWE stock is at 85. We had them at maybe $85. We got it at 17. And the first day it went public, it went to 35, and I sold a chunk of it and doubled my money.
Drinks are on, Jeff, ladies and gentlemen.
So is that why you wanted stock options, Jeff Jarrett, so you could sell it, get more money, Jeff Jarrett? You know what you did, Jeff Jarrett. You know what you did. Slick business move, huh? But you know what you did, though. You definitely know what you did.
I didn't know that. You know what you did. I know what you're talking about. I swear and swear. You know what you're a legend, man.
So that's why he was so big on stock options. He knew WWE was going public. So not only he wanted his regular money, the $300,000, you want extra stock options so you could sell it and double it. Wow. Did Jerry make sure he got his money, man? Definitely made sure of that. Yeah, he definitely know he did. Good Times TV said the DX era was never the same when Shawn Michaels left DX, early 90s, but he went solo, won a championship from Brad, etc. He had a nice run for a few years. That he was the man. Yeah, but Jeff Jarrett, you a sneaky one, man. And I never liked Jeff Jarrett. I always thought he was a snake. Snake dude, man. Can't trust Double J. Let's continue on and see what he got to say in this interview.
Right. And we look, so even then, you leave WWF.
The next day, Monday, Nitro, I was talking anyway. WWE fulfilled stock options. I got those. Had their financial people talk to my financial people. We talked to them, and I told them, guy, that I'll call you later today. I got back after Nitro that I didn't call him. Got back that night. And he said, look, you're going to be in the air. And he said, I've got a hunch on this stock. If you want to let go of some of them, I need you to give me an authority to sell what I want to sell. And I'm like, well, what's your barometer? And he said, and he was on. He said, I think it's going to double first day. He's the red hot stock. And he says, I don't want to be greedy, but I think you need to let go. And I don't know, it wasn't a huge amount, but I want.
The point is, you made loads of money from stock. That's essentially the point. You made a lot of money.
Day one.
It was Philadelphia.
It was Philadelphia. We could say a Nitro. I think I'm there because it was Philadelphia.
Now that's part one of it with Jeff Jarrett. He talks more. He talks separate interview on Inside the Ropes, and he talks about the 300 grand. He gonna talk about why he held the WWE for money back in 1999. So let's see what this dude got to say. And if you notice Jeff Jarrett, I notice when he talks, when he does an interview, I notice he always babbles on or gets long-winded. He never gets straight to the point, and that's why I don't really care for him like that. Sometimes he gets to the point, sometimes he don't. It's just something sneaky and snaky about this dude. Let's continue. Let's see what he got to say.
So you do the whole angle. It's leading up to No Mercy. You get beat by Chyna in a good housekeeping match, and at this, 1999, we didn't really have the Observer or anything else. You didn't get stuff delivered to your door, and nobody thought it was going to happen. So the next night, we're Jeff Jarrett on Raw. He's not there. He's talking about him, but then on Nitro, you show up out of the blue. Even for you, who's walked out before, how strange was that 24-hour period for you? Then you go into No Mercy. You drop the belt to Chyna, you leave the company, you go to Nitro the next day, and then you're all of a sudden a top guy in WCW.
It's surreal, and again, something personally and publicly, there's no way to duplicate that time frame. It's like I had a one-way ticket to Cleveland, bought by the WWF, and I had a flight that was purchased by the Turner organization, WCW.
They must have posted this twice. This is the same interview I just played. I'm not going to play this again. What I'm going to do is I'll get what else he had to say regarding this, because, like I said, we know this Jeff Jarrett. So I don't know why they had this twice, but I'm going to get this up right now shortly, and let's see what's going on. He talked about it, though, and this was on his podcast, unfortunately. I know some of you guys are not big Jeff Jarrett fans. I don't blame you. Not to say he was the worst wrestler, he's just average wrestler who thought that he was world championship material. And we all know that is straight cap.
That's cap. Totally cap.
But we're going to continue on. We're going to see what he has to say. He talks about the 300 grand. Like I said, I'm going to get the interview. Not Inside the Roast, but Jeff Jarrett's podcast, My World with Jeff Jarrett. This is fair use for reaction to educational purposes. Let's continue on. Let's see what you guys have to say. Sick Double J, much respect. Jason Brophy from Calgary. Salute to you, Jason Brophy. Salute to you, man. He was great in WCW towards the end. Got a lot of hate with the silver and black NWO, which Brett, JJ, Scott Steiner was lit. Yeah, that end was. You could say that. But let's continue on. Let's see what he had to say on his podcast regarding this. Jeff Jarrett on My World talking about the 300 grand when he held for WWE back in 1999. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and notification bell as you come to the locker room.
We got out of the car and Brian got his bag out, and I said to my delusional
thinks of Bret Hart in Survivor Series 97, and he probably thinks of Medusa showing up on Nitro. But when he had that conversation with you on the 15th, and he said, "Can I count on you to be there?" As the son of a promoter, he probably feels like this is different. Jeff's going to be there. Would you agree with that?
And again, I'll go back to my delusional, optimistic mindset. But I sincerely believe he absolutely believes that.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's a random name here, but we got to mention it because it's in print. Bob Holly wrote this in his book, talking about you. He walked into the arena for the pay-per-view without his gear and went straight to Vince. Backstage, we could all hear them yelling in Vince's office. Jeff was demanding that Vince pay him all the money he was owed from previous events and the money for the match he was going to do that night, or he wasn't going to go to the ring. Shane, Vince's son, was really vocal. He was cussing Jeff out and was ready to beat the shit out of him. Jeff is a mild-mannered guy who wouldn't fight anybody, so he just sat there and held his ground. Let's time out right there. Was there a shouting match in Vince's office?
No.
when you walk in the building, do you come in without your gear?
So this.
You just made the list! That's cap. Totally cap.
Jeff Jarrett, stop lying. You know it was a shot match. You know it was. Let's see what you guys had to say. He said you need to go to next door to Dungeon and Cannon Boys. Bill Different, JJ, Brett, Dynamite, Bad News Brown with tough, real life tough guys. Yep, hold events up. Let's see what Jeff Jarrett got to say. He gonna take forever to answer a question, guys. Look how long it takes to answer the question.
This is where that's crazy. And what's kind of mesmerizing to me, Bob Holly's, not just Bob Holly, but Bob Holly's editor thought it was important enough to their book to put that in his book, completely incorrect, not factual at all. But here we are still talking about it. But so, I mean, that just, the context of that is a little amusing to me.
Spoken and spun like a true politician. I mean,
definitely spoken and spun like a true politician. Here he go. He about to start capping. He about to start taking forever to answer the question. He about to spin it around and make it think like Bob Holly that has no truth to what he's saying and what the editor's saying. Thinking about Bob Holly trying to write a book himself made me laugh a lot. I know, right?
But no. So what was interesting was, got up, showered. I don't know if me and Brian, I'm sure, ate breakfast. But anyway, we got out of the car and Brian got his bag out and I just shut the trunk. He goes, "What are you doing?" I said, I'm not going to take my gear in. I don't really know how this is going to go. He goes, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Brian," I said, "we've got some business transactions to take care of. Brian, I don't want to know nothing about it." He walked off. You know, we walked in together, but he's like, "I don't want to." And I just left my gear in the car because I really didn't know from Friday to Sunday look, Vince has a show. He has a promotion. He's responsible.
Maybe he wrote something else, right?
He's responsible at this point on Sunday, October 17th, to everybody else except me.
Yeah.
Knows I'm going to work for his competitor, and rightly so. So he could have very easily said, "Jeff, we're going to go in a different direction. I appreciate you being here. I'm probably going to pay you a couple $100 for just showing up. We're going to catch you up your money. Hey, you know what? Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. But you got to understand, we're going to do a count out. We're going to do a change title. A couple of years before that, they did a Shawn Michaels, Shane Douglas deal. I mean, There's been all kinds of things. We're just going to go in a different direction. Hey, Jeff, matter of fact, remember the day you started and you came up and we did that whole Survivor Series deal and all that? We don't want to get in. We don't want to put ourselves in this kind of environment. It's probably just a lot better, not only for us, but for you. Thanks. But no thanks. Call Beth tomorrow for your stocks and we're going to get you paid up and your checks will keep coming on time. How did I know that conversation wasn't going to take place?
So what did happen?
So, and it's funny, preparing for this week and obviously we know all the news real time that's going on. But, and when I went back to WWE in 2019, actually my bad, in 2018 for the Hall of Fame, and then 2019 when I was working with his individual day in and day out. So I get to the building, go in. Terry Taylor was one of the first guys that I saw. "Hey, Jeff, good to see you." And I think they had sort of broken from production meeting and I'd like to hear the podcast. I just heard, and look, I nobody likes this, but I heard Jim didn't have a real good production meeting because they knew sort of the set of circumstances and that kind of stuff. But so I go in and I tell Terry, I'm trying to think somebody else was there, but I just said, "Hey, I'd like to work something out today. We need to figure this out." And Terry's like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Terry, it's probably not a conversation for you to have." He said, "Who is?" I said, "Look, I'll talk to Vince. I'll talk to JR. You guys got a show to run, but you know, if we're going to get a deal done, we probably need to get on it now because there's a lot of.
Tell me you did not just say that.
Here he go by Star Wine. This is crazy. Let's continue on.
Ins and outs to it. And Terry's just like, get a deal done. I said, it's not about the match. It's not. It's not about the match. Okay, I'll be back. And so I go out in the arena and they're load in, load out, and I just sit, maybe 15th row ringside, opposite end of entrance, and just sort of sat down in my chair and just started thinking through what I had strategized in my brain. And I look over to my corner.
Did you hear what he just said? Didn't he just say that I had no idea any of these conversations were going to come up, but he said he was strategizing in his brain? Yeah, I knew you was lying, Jeff.
That's cap. Totally cap.
You already planned on getting your money, and you knew things would be a disagreement between yourself and WWE. See, he tells himself without telling on himself. Oh my goodness, let's do something else, man. Let's continue on. I just want to notate that real quick. That's crazy. Yep, Figure 4 TV said it. Busted. I'm strategizing. Me, you had it planned out the whole time, Jeff. Stop it.
And this gentleman retold the story through his eyes. And I'm talking about a young, brand new in the WWF this times, who had just sort of come on board maybe a year prior, Mark Carrano.
Wow.
Mark Carrano's job.
For you guys you don't know, Mark Carrano, he is no longer with WWE, and he was up to no good too. He's not a good name, or wasn't a good name. So Jeff is kind of, if he gonna say the real thing about Mark Carrano, I'll give him kudos for that. But he wasn't no good person either. Let's continue on.
Description for October the 17th, 1999. Words out of his mouth were, to follow Jarrett and the belt. And I said, and I asked him in 2018, follow Jarrett and the belt? Like, what does that mean? He goes, we wanted to know where the belt was. I'm like, oh my gosh. Mark, what are you doing? Oh, nothing. I'm just standing over here. And I didn't really put two and two together at the time, but his job was to follow me around and keep an eye on me. I was going to leave. He was to give everybody the heads up and all this kind of stuff. So anyway.
If this was a football game, he was the QB spy. He's just watching the ball. He's just watching you.
All he was doing. And no ball was in the Gund Arena. It was in the car, in the trunk.
So you specifically left it and your gear in your bag in the car.
Yeah. And that is not, I'm going to flex my muscles. I truly had no idea how the day was going to go.
Hypothetically, was it one of your Halliburtons?
No.
That would have been hilarious.
It's Toomey Duffel.
Would have been hilarious. Yeah. So you tell Terry, hey, I need to talk to Vince. And
I specifically remember, I'll talk to Vince if that's what needs to happen, or I'll talk to JR, or I'll talk to anybody. But I want to talk about money today.
And what happened?
So sat down, JR came up and sat down and says, where we at? I said, well, Jim, I really hate.
Are you in catering? Are you in the arena?
In the arena.
Okay.
And I said, Jim, no, Terry left on the first conversation. He came back for the conversations following, but me and JR sat down and he's like, where we at? And I said, Jim, I just want to say, man, I hate that this is where we're at. I feel as a character, I'm about as hot as I've been since several years ago. But I said,
that's cap. Totally cap.
You was not as hot as you will been. What were you smoking, Jeff Jarrett? Get out of here. You know you lying, Jeff. Totally cap. Come on, man.
I got it. I understood that you got to make your decisions and Vince has to make his decisions. Well, Jeff, we thought we had a deal. I said, I don't know how you could think that. I never signed anything. I never saw a contract. I mean, there was nothing. And he goes, well, I thought we come to agreement. Business is so hot, man, you don't want to go down to that place. And I'm like, this isn't, I don't even know if he said that, but it was just pretty much chit chat, small talk, because at this point he knew the ship had sailed.
It's done. Yeah.
Done. And I said, so Jim, here's the situation. I want to make everybody's life easier from today moving forward. I want to get out of your hair, and not specifically you, Jim, but the WWF's hair. I want there to be a nice parting of the ways. Let's do our business today and move on. You guys got a lot on your horizon, going public tomorrow. You got Raw, you got SmackDown, UPN. That was a really big deal. I mean, SmackDown was, I don't think we probably stressed enough on how big of a deal it was during that summer that, quote unquote, our television distribution doubled to a network. I mean, it was big news.
I just want to pause for this second. Isn't this ironic? Back in 1999, that Jeff mentioned while he was leaving WWE to go to WCW, while he wants $300,000, that they were going public and they were going to get a big TV deal. And this was the same year that SmackDown debuted, and they're talking about the whole UPN, SmackDown, everything. Fast forward to 2025, it's going to be WWE, Monday Night Raw on Netflix, NXT CW, and SmackDown returning to the USA Network. I guess it's true what they say. As more things change, as some things stay the same. Also, that WWE is always evolving. They was evolving back then in 99. The cable deal was big back then. Big to get a TV cable deal. Now WWE's moving to streaming, which is Netflix, the first publicly traded wrestling company to ever do that. I just want to notate that the WWE is always evolving, and they didn't just start today or last week or the last couple of years. This was in 99. They was making big power moves, and they still doing today in 2024. I just want to notate that out. And yeah, he wanted them shares so he could sell them and double them. But if Jeff had stuck around with WWE for the rest of his career, yes, we wouldn't have never got TNA, but he could have been a very valuable asset to WWE corporate wise backstage. But I want to notate that. Let's continue on.
On the very first SmackDown, and me and Chyna had several cool storylines. We did the mud match on that. So SmackDown was a big component of this. So there was a lot going on in Jim's eyes. Everybody's workload, quote unquote, exponentially went up. It wasn't just we're so common to it today, and it's amazing. WrestleMania week has Raw, SmackDown, Hall of Fame, NXT 1, NXT 2. I mean, there's so much. We're doing it. Back in those days, it was Raw and TV. I mean, it was Raw and pay-per-view, and live events. So adding another 2-hour network show was big business. Anyway, back to the story. So I said, I want this. He said, well, what do you got in mind? I said, I want to clean it up. I said, the payoffs that I have coming to me. I said, I really think it's best for everybody. I want to get paid for all the money I have coming for me. You know what that is, Jeff? And I said, as far as dates, I said, yeah, I know my live events that I hadn't got paid. And I said, I got the pay-per-views and we got the day to cover. So I would like to clean all that up. Well, I don't know if we can do that, Jeff. I said, okay, I understand that. You guys can't meet that, then I don't really know why I'm here.
Yeah.
I have zero leverage when I leave today, Jim. You're an old timer like me. Once today's over, it's over. You're going to make that.
I want to add context to that, because you said earlier you felt like you'd been shortchanged on some payoffs. You specifically cited some loops that you were on with Dustin, and you went back and you complained, and they wrote another check. But as you said, you didn't know if it was necessarily making a correction as much as it was just placating you. Well, by God, that's because he's trying to keep his Intercontinental champion happy, and let's just keep the wheel going. But if you're going to another company, well, what's my motivation to fix your pay now?
No,
but all leverage if you don't go ahead and square up right now And you probably did have your quarterly checks for royalties. You had a track record of about what I'd been making on the house shows when it was the accurate number, not the low ball number. And you probably had a track record for what your pay-per-view payoffs were. So in my head, we haven't talked about this. You add all that together and say, here's the number I think it is, and here's how I got to that number. Is that right?
So it's 3 or 4 house show runs and 2 or 3 pay-per-views. And I knew the number in my head, but I put on the negotiation hat and I said, in theory, can we get this done? Well, and this went back and forth with me and Jim a couple of times. And I said, can I get my money today? Jeff, it ain't up to me. It's up to the old man. Okay, find out. I've just got time today, Jim. He got up, went back, did it, and I don't know exactly, but I know that I made them go first. What is the number?
You always make them go first. That's the best way to do it.
What is that number? And and this is where it gets into, and I had so much time that day on my hands that I had the match in my mind, and I know Pat and Chyna, we'll get to that in a minute, but Pat Patterson and Chyna are going over different ideas. They've got fish and guitars and flour and powder and, the prep for all the match. And I'm sitting in the arena with my street clothes on, talking to Jim Ross and Terry Taylor and trying to figure this out. So it's an interesting set of circumstances going on. But Jim came back and said, yeah. And I said, well, what's the number? What are you paying me? Because me trying to throw a number is something that you just don't do.
Yeah, you work down from that. So you let them start and you go up from that.
Yes, but also it's not like, hey, I'm at the Garden, I want $5,000 for my shot.
Yeah, no. They always determine the payoff.
100%. That's common ground, and that's pretty a practical matter. The promoter knows what the gross house is and knows what his expenses are. The talent doesn't. So it wasn't like out in the ordinary that I'm saying, hey, you go, Conrad, as a business person, negotiation, you anchor the negotiation. I get all that. That wasn't even my mindset. You're going to have to tell me what that number is. So they came back with a number, and I just sat there and I said, let me think on it. And so I think we got a deal, Jeff. Let's get this done. And then, the whole idea of cash, and it just gets so preposterous. The stories that have run down and bank wiring and, all that kind of stuff. How that story went from bank wiring and it's a Sunday. Does that even make sense to you?
Oh yeah. Let's mention that. From Bob Holly, he says, Vince said he'd make sure Jeff Jarrett was paid, but Jeff said he wanted the money wired into his account immediately before he brought his bag and the IC belt in. Otherwise, he was getting on a plane and going home. I thought it was wrong to do that. I sort of understood where he was coming from because sometimes it took up to 6 months to get our pay-per-view checks. He was owed a lot of money, and I guess he was worried that Vince wouldn't pay him. Even so, you don't hold somebody up like that. Management had spent so much money building up the match as one of the main events, they couldn't turn it around. They had to deliver Jarrett versus Chyna, and since Jarrett was the IC champ going in, he had Vince over a barrel. When Jarrett confirmed that his wife had the money, over $300,000 had arrived in his account, he brought in his bag, got dressed, and stayed away from everybody. Road Dogg, being the loyal friend he is, stayed by Jeff's side. So you see right there, Bob is saying it was wired. I've always thought, I don't know many bank wires you can get done on a Sunday.
99?
Ever, period. You can't get bank wires on Sunday. And then the other thing that we've heard is Jim Ross says somewhere in an interview that you wanted it in cash. And when he said, well, Jeff, there's no banks open on Sunday. What do we do? Supposedly they paid you in cash. Did they pay you in cash?
Just think about that. I'm going to get money wired on a Sunday, and my wife is going to oh boy. I love the wrestling industry because you want the fictitious story or you want the truth. So anyway, it's just crazy. No wiring. So anyway, so he came to me, and look, I told you, you're in charge of topics. I'm in charge of truth. So Jim comes to me and they said, we've sort of done pen to paper and we're thinking 150. We're thinking 150 will get it all cleaned up. And I said, okay. All right, Jim, 150 is what you think the number is. You sure? And we more or less did a head nod. And I said, you know, Jim, let me think on this.
No, brother, it doesn't work for me right now.
I bet you are taking time to think about it, how much extra money you could get for Vince McMahon trying to suck him dry of all his money. You knew he should have got, I don't think, if you knew how much, why you need time to go back? Why you couldn't say 300 on the spot, Jeff? Why you have to take time? Because you was trying to figure out how you can get extra money out of Vince McMahon before you leave to go to WCW. On top of the fact you already got shares that you was selling. Man, Jeff, you sound like a greedy dude, man. Yeah, it's funny, right? Coming straight out of a comic book, man. You straight out of a comic book, Jeff Jarrett. Let's continue on.
I said, this is going on in and blah, 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 this. So he said, I'll be back and let's close this deal up. So however much time transpired, half hour, one of those things, it might have been an hour, might have been 15 minutes, whatever it was. But when he came and sat back down, I said, Jim, remember how you changed the deal on me a year in? And he's like, well, yeah. I said, no, I said, I understand all the reasons you did. And I respect the hell out of it. But we kind of agreed, but we didn't really kind of agree on 150. I don't really agree with that right now. And I've had time to reflect on my last 2 years. So if we're going to get a deal done, this place, Gund Arena, is sold out for sure. And they've got a lot of WWE's money in their box office. So let's double that and get me to 300. And those are my payoffs, because I get a healthy payoff out of tonight because, quote unquote, I'm doing the honors. And give me the money out of Gund Arena's bank, not WWE's bank, and let's go to work. And he didn't like it.
What did he say?
He just, Jeff.
Bet he didn't. I bet he didn't like it. Trying to get extra money. TTJ Big Gunner said, what do you say here? You said that, bro, Vince was a cheat, and I don't blame Jeff at all. Really? How you know Vince was a cheat? Because if he's such a cheat, Jeff Jarrett said he had to take time to think over going from 153 to 300 grand. I mean, he said they changed the deal, but Jeff Jarrett's a sneaky dude too. He ain't I'm not saying Vince is a saint either. They took 6 months to pay out, hoping they forgot about what they should. So even Hogan had to press Vince to get paid in full. I heard about that. I don't know. I don't think Jeff should be owed 300 grand. For 2 years, you wait 2 years to get your money? TTJ Big Gunner, would you wait 2 years to get your money? Whatever line professional work that you do, would you wait that long to get your money for 2 years? He said 2 years worth. Come on, man. We got to read between lines. Jeff thought he was Shawn. Exactly, because he mentioned he thought it was the Shane Douglas-Shawn Michaels match. You're not Shawn Michaels. Nowhere near it. Let's continue on, man. Jeff Jarrett's crazy.
Jeff, you can't do that. I said, I totally. And I said, Jim, please look at me, because I really want you to understand where I'm coming from. You're absolutely right. You do not have to do this. Vince does not have to do this. Nobody has to do this. I'm wanting my money to and I'm talking about multiple.
Don't this sound like the Ultimate Warrior, SummerSlam 1991? He pulled the Ultimate Warrior. He pulled the Ultimate Warrior.
No, brother, it doesn't work for me right now.
Yeah, he did the same thing Warrior did. Held Vince up for money, one show to the event, then Vince fired him afterwards after he paid him. Crazy. Let's continue on.
Multiple pay-per-views. The scenario, I'm not under contract. Let's just end this deal one way or another. But I says, you know as well as I do, tomorrow, my value and payoffs are not even remotely important. They're kind of important today, but it's y'all's decision on how important they are, not mine. It's not my decision at all. Okay, I'm gonna go talk to the old man. 30 minutes go by, 45 minutes go by, whatever it may be. And Jim and Terry walked up and said, go get your bag, get dressed. We'll have it for you before you go to the ring. I said, okay. I went, and I'd seen Chyna walking around multiple times, you know, and
she's nervous. It's her big night.
It's her, and you know, not that it was my responsibility to be worrying about her personal feelings, but I did have some compassion for her. I really did, because look, it was her night, and in so many ways, and she deserved every bit of it. There, without question, she worked her ass off. Obviously, she worked her ass off in the gym. You know, at that time, you know, her relationship. I mean, she had done she deserved everything she was getting that night.
And it feels like if you're in her shoes, it might be in jeopardy now. Here we are, and it might not happen.
For sure. Especially what happened on the month before pay-per-view, happened on Raw. I throw her down the deal.
Yeah.
I mean, so everything going on. And this wasn't going to be, look, how many, well, I mean, I hadn't been in any good housekeeping matches, but I'd been in plenty of barroom brawls and moondog matches.
Yeah.
No holds barred and cage. I've been in the business. So all kinds of gimmick matches. I had no problem putting together in my mind, no problem to piece it together. I already had in my mind the prior week leading up to it. We can do this and we can do that. I'd already had the match in my mind pretty much laid out, but me and her hadn't discussed it.
Right.
And then Pat had that because, and man, we'll get to that in a second. I don't know where you want to go with it. If you want to go talk about the match now, but I mean, just Pat, I got to just throw this in there. So once we knew the match was going on, Pat and I'm trying to think who else, because I think Teddy Long, but Pat goes, Jeff, I can't do his accent, but he's like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to throw him a hell of a curve. And when he lays out that curve, that it looks like I've, you know, DQ, whatever it was, that we're going to get out of it, and the belt didn't switch in hands. I just said, brilliant. I said, the people will come unglued. The false finish that we gave them, it was a DQ or whatever it was, but that was a Pat Patterson. I'm like, this is brilliant.
Well, since you brought up the match, let's talk about the match. But before we do, I want to circle back to two things. One, you asked for it out of the gunned account, and I'm sure some of our listeners are thinking, well, why would he do that? But me being me, I just think you're thinking, boy, if I convince them of this and they do something they don't really want to do and they write me a check, you bet your ass before I get to the bank in the morning, that check has had a stop payment issued, and it is as worthless as a notebook sheet of paper.
100%.
So if I ask for it from the gunned account, whatever the gate was that night, you know, 5, 6, 7, 800,000, whatever it is, it'll just be 300 light.
It's very simple. And to tell you the truth, how much easier does it make it on everybody?
It is way easier, and I think it's a stroke of genius. But I also love that, because I'm such a nerd, when you filed your taxes that year, you got a fucking 1099 from the gun.
Oh, beautiful, right?
So, boy, God, I love the line when you sit Jim Ross down and you know this guy
down beside me. He wanted to do business. He didn't have to walk out there,
but he did. And he's taking his lumps now. You felt like he got over on you once before, and when he comes back to visit you the second or third time, whatever it is, and you said, remember, Jim, when you changed my contract? Like, in that very moment, you didn't need any Blue Chew, did you?
Well, you got your sponsor in there, did you?
I get it. It's a wrestling podcast, but he's saving us money on our mortgage. Do you really trust this process? It's a receipt, I think they call it in wrestling.
that is what to me. And I don't think I ever voiced it to. I know I never voiced it to Jill. Me and my accountant had conversations, and I didn't really. That was embarrassing to me to talent. So I don't know that any talent really knew the depths of that, but it was a real ball shot to me that I didn't forget. And would I have handled it today the same way? No,
of course not.
It's that age, that stage of career. We all got egos in this industry, everything that goes with it. Knowing that, candidly, and this is something that a lot of times is completely glossed over. I had worked in WCW prior. I did not want to go back. It's that simple. Vince McMahon and the WWF and Madison Square Garden and Raw and SmackDown, the prestige. I'm a third generation guy. WWF is where stars are made. I did not want to leave. And I had some deep anger and resentment toward JR because it was very obvious. If I'm going to feed my family, I got to go.
That's probably the most honest thing he said this whole time. I do believe he didn't want to go WCW. That's how Bret Hart felt, because he know WWE is the number one for wrestling promotion. You say you think it's more vibrant than he really is. True. NXT update, Wesley on his own against Femi. Yeah, I've heard about that. I've been seeing it. He's definitely on his own, and I will cover NXT Heat Wave at Red Carpet Ring post show coverage. But we're going to wrap this up shortly. I think Jeff is almost done finally.
Look, I do want to circle back to this because I feel like this is worth mentioning, especially when you said, boy, when I do it that way today, you're a 32-year-old man here. Yeah. 32. You're still
a puppy.
Years. Yeah.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out this podcast here.
And that's all about the interview with Jeff Jarrett over him on the Intercontinental Championship. He talked about the $300,000, and he also talked about, how the whole business came about of him getting his $300,000. So that was crazy. Jeff definitely was lying, except for the part he didn't want to go to WCW, but he definitely thought he was bigger than he was. That's the crazy part about it. But that's just how it was. And that's between him, the match where Chyna won the Intercontinental Championship in a Good Housekeeping match at No Mercy 1999. Jeff was not on contract. His contract was already up. So he was doing WWE favor, and he used the championship as leverage to get his $300,000, similar to what Ultimate Warrior did in 1991. It just Ultimate Warrior used his star power. He was not champion that particular time. But definitely was interesting. This is the worst Intercontinental Championship times. The worst times this championship has ever been looked in a bad position, in a bad light. You guys let me know in the comment section below and the live chat. What do you think were the worst Intercontinental Championship times were behind the scenes of the Intercontinental Championship in the WWE? I appreciate it, guys. I'm going to head off and finish and check out the beginning of NXT Heat Wave. But definitely, guys, I appreciate it. Soon, two videos will pop up. One will be legendary match Goldberg versus Hogan. Next video will be Jacob Fatu's criminal record before wrestling. You guys already know what it is. And until the next time, again, it is OUT.